Do you want to know 7 reasons why Gennady had no guys mocks? Golovkin beats Kell Brook? Well, stay tuned to this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing, back with my series 7 Reasons. I want to give you guys a fight prediction on the upcoming fight and give you 7 reasons why Gennady Golovkin defeats Kell Brook. Now, first of all, a quick disclaimer, this is just my opinion. And I know there's a lot of radical boxing fans who get sensitive and passionate and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that I don't like one of the guys because I'm picking against them. I'm going to break down in this video why I think the person, Gennady Golovkin in this case, will win. I like Kell Brook, has nothing to do with anything. If I'm wrong, I will do my post-fight video as always, and I will congratulate Kell Brook. It is nothing personal. It's just like Highlander. There can be only one, and I have to make a pick, and I'm picking Golovkin. Here's why. Now, this list is in no particular order. Let's get started. Number 1, Triple G's chin over Kell Brook's chin. Now, the reason I say that is they both have had limited competition, meaning there's not upper echelon, in prime, undefeated, elite names on either of their resume. In fact, I don't even know. Golovkin's best win is probably David Lemieux, Martin Murray, you know what I mean? Guys who have had losses before. Kell Brook, his best win is clearly Sean Porter. So with that being said, from what I have seen, it looks like Triple G's chin is more durable because I have not really seen him drastically hurt on Queer Street, things like that. And legend has it, rumor has it, that in his 350 plus fights or amateur, and that number could be inflated to a degree, but he has never been knocked down or knocked out in all that amateur experience. However, Kell Brook, I'm not saying he has a bad chin, I'm not saying his chin is shit, but he is the one jumping up in weight, and I have seen him visibly rocked before. In the fight with Vyacheslav Senchenko, to his credit, to Brook's credit, he ended up stopping Senchenko shortly after he was hurt, but he was, if you watch that fight again, he did get hurt in that. And to me, Senchenko is not a world beater. His best win is what? He lost to Paulie Malignaggi, he beat Ricky Hatton off a 3-year hiatus and layoff, and in that layoff Ricky Hatton was doing drugs and different stuff, and this is after a Mayweather KO loss, TKO, a Pacquiao KO loss, things of that sort, and that's Senchenko. So to me, that's not a world beater, and at that point in Kell Brook's career, he was hurt. I also seen him hurt in another fight where his glove touched the canvas, Carson Jones. I've seen him, it looked like he's been bothered more. So when it comes to the battle of the chins, I have to rate Golovkin's chin a bit higher. Guys like Curtis Stevens did back up Golovkin in spots, but they were not able to sustain that, and Curtis Stevens has knocked guys out with single shots, things like that. So to me, I think, and I have to rate from what I've seen with their past competition, I have to rate Golovkin's chin a bit higher, plus he's not the one that's moving up. Number 2, Kell Brook's leg / mobility with added weight gain. Now, I told you guys, weight can be a double-edged sword. It could help you in terms of if what Kell Brook is saying is true and he was killing himself to make welterweight, now having this cushion of not having to diet as strict and things like that, maybe he feels physically stronger, right? But the same could be said for Amir Khan, who said almost those exact same things. He says he was killing himself to make welterweight, even though he only had 3 welterweight fights. He said it was too hard. He's a big frame guy, and 154 to middleweight is probably where he naturally belongs. And then, as we know, he all got knocked out. We all know he got knocked out by Canelo. So it's seeing is believing, and that's kind of what it is. So I'm concerned with Kell Brook's mobility with this added weight gain, because the second part of that is he's gonna feel, in a perfect world for Kell Brook, he feels great with this added weight. But the flip side of that is muscles take up more oxygen, right? So fighters fatigue and gas out. Most notably in fighting recently, in a high-profile fight, I would say Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, part 1. Nate Diaz was getting busted up and peppered. He had some scar tissue, so his face started to get bloodied with Conor McGregor's strikes, and Conor he was executing, looked very methodical. However, he looked like a completely different fighter in round 2. You know what I mean? He started to slow up, and Nate Diaz, being tough and durable, was able to catch on. And you could argue that that was kind of the same formula in the second Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz fight. And this is just an example. I know UFC is different from boxing, but the fact is Conor McGregor, he took on more weight than he was used to in a short period of time. Now his frame, he clearly didn't look bad with the weight, but you never know how you're going to perform with the weight. It's like having a weight vest or being underwater, and you might feel great for a couple rounds. Boxing is 12 rounds. That's 36 minutes. In addition, you have to worry about somebody with the monstrous punching power like Gennady Golovkin hitting you back. All that with the extra weight. So the other thing is, in Kell Brook's fights, from what I have seen, I've never really seen Kell Brook. A lot of times he's a big, massive welterweight. A lot of times he doesn't really have to use his legs too much. He uses his legs to cut off the ring and get in position. I haven't had to see him use his legs to his defensive posture, like to get into positions defensively, I guess you could say, like a Floyd Mayweather, Edeslandi Lara, Guillermo Rigondeaux. I've never really seen him use his legs that fluidly to navigate around the real estate of that ring, because he was necessarily in danger, or the guy that he was facing was 10 to 15 pounds bigger than him, etc. Things like that. So I'm just concerned with Kell Brook's legs and mobility. Golovkin does an exceptional job with cutting off the ring, and he has good balance and obviously power. Number 3, Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, more impactful shots. Meaning, the problem with fights like this where the fighters dare to be great, or they're fighting someone who's naturally bigger than them, is the fact that you have to do more as the boxer to make it look effective, especially when that guy has punching power. Like, you look at Mayweather versus Canelo, he almost pitched a shutout. Mayweather's Mayweather. There's only one Mayweather, we know that. But one judge still gave it to Canelo and said it was a draw, right? And I consider that giving it to Canelo because he should have flat out lost, right? You look at other issues like Brian Vera versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., part 1. Chavez was clearly way bigger than him naturally, and some people argue Brook is bigger than Triple G. I'm not even going to entertain that because he's not naturally bigger. His frame, he looks good with the weight, but it's still different when you're fighting with that weight. But anyway, Chavez Jr., Brian Vera. Brian Vera was clearly much busier, but he didn't really seem to hurt Chavez Jr. in those exchanges because Chavez Jr. was so big, right? So Chavez Jr. was pretty inactive compared to Brian Vera, who was very active. And a lot of the judges were scoring it for Chavez Jr. and they gave him the fight because when he did land 1, 2, 3 punches or 10 punches in a round, they rocked Vera's head back because he was the naturally smaller person. So I think this may be a similar situation. Also, Amir Khan versus Canelo, another similar situation where the smaller guy, I had him up the first 4 rounds because he was busier, he was more effective, and he was outboxing Canelo and just landing the crisper punches, and Canelo looked kind of slow in there, right? And rounds 5 and 6 I gave to Canelo. In 6 he got knocked out. But that's the problem. After the fight, it was revealed that 2 of the 3 judges gave those, they had Canelo ahead in that particular fight. So from my experience, especially with a big star type of fighter, and especially with the guy that's bigger, you have to look exceptional when outboxing them, because if they have the power to hurt you, some judges score kind of screwy like that, and they'll just go off of the person landing the bigger shots. I could do this all day. Pacquiao versus Tim Bradley, part 1. A lot of people thought that even though Bradley was busier, clearly busier, Pacquiao was fighting in spurts and flurries at the last 15-30 seconds of each round, things like that. Bradley's clearly busier, but he wasn't really hurting Pacquiao. So some people go off impact, and I think Golovkin has the type of eye-dropping shots because his power is just thudding and he's naturally the bigger person, which is going to be a common theme through this video. Golovkin's bigger. Number 4, Golovkin's body shots. Now, I say this time and time again, the body shot to me is the ultimate lie detector test. Whatever you did in camp, if you put on weight and you were just eating up and you didn't put on your pounds and bulk up the right way, if you had a shitty training camp, if you were getting dogged in training camp by your sparring partners, the body shots are going to be the ultimate lie detector, and that's going to reveal anything that you try to hide. A lot of fighters have a good poker face. They can take a shot upstairs, but when you start digging downstairs to that breadbasket, it's different. Brandon Rios, great poker face. He's been in there with Pacquiao. He's been in there with Diego Chavez, Mike Alvarado, guys who can punch. And he wasn't really noticeably hurt in many of those fights, right? He has a good poker face. But when he fought Timothy Bradley, who's not revered as the biggest puncher in the division, Bradley was able to stop him in his tracks based on a body shot. Golovkin is a vicious body puncher, as Matthew Macklin, right? And I've seen him destroy guys. So what I've noticed with Kell Brook, even though he was killing himself to make weight, that's what he says, he looked leaner and looked more vascular when he was fighting at welterweight. He looks big and bulkier, but he doesn't look as defined. And it's not a bodybuilding contest, but again, when you're in with someone who's naturally bigger and they're a body snatcher, that doesn't necessarily suit you or benefit you, because like I said, Golovkin has pinpoint accuracy with his offense. He's good at placing his punches. Sometimes his punches are coming from a weird chopping trajectory, things you don't expect. And again, he's a body snatcher, so that's something Kell Brook has to watch out for. Number 5, Triple G longer jab. Now, to Kell Brook's credit, he has a good jab. They both have a good jab, but I did a Boxingego first look, tail of the tape, vital statistics. Make sure you guys check out that video and subscribe if you want to see more videos like that. But Golovkin has a good jab also, and he had that on full display versus David Lemieux, a threatening puncher. He stayed patient behind the jab. He was composed. David Lemieux, being the shorter fighter, could never really get in range. Golovkin's jab is like a power punch because he's such a strong dude, and that keeps people at bay. And you notice David Lemieux, when he fought guys like Glenn Tapia, he was throw caution to the wind type of fighter. He had no mercy, and Glenn Tapia had pretty good punching power versus James Kirkland and guys like that, but David Lemieux didn't respect it. But clearly he respected Golovkin's jab, and before you knew it, he was getting his head rocked back and his hair was flapping around all crazy versus Golovkin like looking like a mohawk and stuff like that. So when it comes to jabs, even though Kell Brook has a great jab too, he has a great jab at welterweight against guys like Sean Porter and the people he's fought. So when I'm looking at the jab contest, then since they both are strong and they both have a good jab, then I as long as Golovkin uses it, which I think he would for this type of fight, the shorter guy who's going to try to outbox him, he's going to try to disrupt that. So I have to, in the jab contest, I would probably lean towards Golovkin because he has the longer reach, and he also has middleweight power for certain. There's no question he has middleweight power. We don't really know where Kell Brook's actual power will be. No headgear, no sparring, but in a full fight at the elite level at middleweight. So when it comes to the jab contest, I think Golovkin may disrupt him better with the longer arms and a power jab that he has. Number 6, Kell Brook's last 3 fights. Now, this is very important to me. I follow both these guys' careers. Kell Brook's last 3 opponents, not impressive. Kevin Bezier, who lost twice to a guy, Jojo Dan. Now, it's not about triangle theories. However, Kevin Bezier hadn't done anything since the second loss to Jojo Dan, and his very next fight was Kell Brook, because allegedly Kell Brook got injured and dropped out of the Diego Chavez fight, and by that time Bezier became Brook's mandatory for his IBF belt. So that's how that fight came about. But he hadn't done anything. I'd understand if he strung up a couple wins, beat some journeymen, or 3 to 4 win streak. But he literally lost to Jojo Dan, and the very next year, with no fights in between, he fought Kell Brook because he was the quote-unquote IBF mandatory, right? Before that, Frankie Gavin, not a world beater, someone who lost to Leonard Bundu, who just brutally got knocked out by Errol Spence Jr., who is still considered an up-and-comer. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the resume to back that he's the best welterweight, right? And then before that was Jojo Dan. Now, I give Jojo Dan the pass because Jojo Dan is a guy who was his mandatory also, and he was coming off the stab injury. So I was like, okay, it's a feel-good fight, satisfies the mandatory. You have to see if your leg is still working properly and things like that. But I don't think any of those guys prepare you for Golovkin. Now, keep in mind, I want to make this perfectly clear. I don't believe Kell Brook or Golovkin has a stellar, deep resume. In fact, there's a lot of guys, win, lose, or draw, like Gabe Rosado, DeMarcus Corley. Their resumes are killing Kell Brooks and Triple G's in terms of who they stepped in with. And that's important because when you step up at the elite level, then we know what some of these, if they fought elite level people in their divisions, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence Jr., then he might not be undefeated, possibly. You know what I mean? And if he did, then if he beat all those guys, then he's the man, right? So even though Golovkin also doesn't have the deepest resume, he's fought middleweights. He's fought guys who were middleweights or like big frame, bigger than him. guys like Martin Murray, he was a big dude, not a huge puncher, but he's a big dude, and Golovkin dismantled him, right? Guys like Gabe Rosado, stuff like that. So I think the last 3 fights for Kell Brook haven't been the types of fights that will prepare him for the in the trenches type of war that this could be. You fought Sean Porter, which is the best name on your resume, and then the last 3 opponents to me were pretty much a cakewalk. I rate Kell Brook at welterweight, and I don't think any of them stylistically will help you prepare. And it's not just about finding the exact same style, because when I looked at Floyd Mayweather versus Marcos Maidana 1 and 2, I think those fights prepare him for a guy like Pacquiao. Not that Maidana fights anything like Pacquiao, but it's a tough fight with a guy who's naturally bigger, a guy who clearly has a chin, a guy who clearly has punching power and is awkward and unorthodox. It's hard to read, and especially in that first fight, Maidana took Floyd Mayweather, had him against the ropes, tried to bully him. So that will help you prepare for another tough fight, which people thought would be a tough fight in the Manny Pacquiao fight. But I don't see how Jojo Dan, Frankie Gavin, Kevin Bezier would really prepare you for a monster like Golovkin. And everyone's calling him a monster, so until otherwise proven, he's going to be that monster, right? He's at least a good fighter, and he's strong. We do know these things, whether you like his resume or not. So I don't think that's a stellar lineup to prepare you. If you beat Keith Thurman at Errol Spence and then you decided to move up, then I would understand it. That's why I never understood what Kell Brook saying, like, oh, Sugar Ray fought Hagler and Shane Mosley jumped up and fought Oscar De La Hoya, or Roberto Duran fought Sugar Ray Leonard. Those are all one thing that they all have in common. They're all guaranteed Hall of Famers, and they were already accomplished at the time in which they moved up. Shane Mosley was clearly the best lightweight, and he was a knockout artist. He needed a challenge, so what better way than to fight the Golden Boy in LA? You're from Pomona, Oscar De La Hoya is from East LA. Why not jump up and fight? It's a money fight, so that made all the sense in the world. When you're clearly the best lightweight, might as well move up, get a huge payday, and sell out the forum, right? But I don't think Kell Brook did that at welterweight, right? And he's the one that's moving up. So his last 3 opponents, to me, they haven't been enough to prepare you for this type of fight. And finally, and I couldn't leave this 7 reasons without saying this one. Number 7, size matters. And this is probably the easiest one. If Kell Brook had more elite level experience, I know he's fought at 155 before, but I'm talking about elite, where he fought somebody like a Charlo brother, just whoever's considered elite right now, Edislani Lara, Demetrius Andrade. If he could beat one of those guys, then that would be great experience, right? Even an Austin Trout, we don't really know what he can do versus a good name, a big name at 154, let alone 160. And I don't care what anyone says from pictures and Kell Brook eating up. The thing is, if you listen to Kell Brook in interviews, he's telling you that he's eating whatever he wants and it feels great because he doesn't have to be as strict on his diet. He doesn't have to watch every calorie. He doesn't have to shit every 5 minutes. He doesn't have to go into the sauna. So he's eating up and taking advantage of that cushion. Versus Golovkin, he's not doing anything that he hasn't had to do in his last fight since he's been a professional. He was an amateur middleweight. You know what I mean? He moved up when he was younger, but he fought right before he got out of the amateur program. He was a middleweight. And as a pro, he's been a middleweight. So he's comfortable making middleweight. He knows what to do. Kell Brook is the one who's having to sacrifice, who's jumping up, who's having to do different things. And I'm telling you guys, you can say whatever you want. Carrying the weight in sparring or walking around versus fighting an elite person, 2 totally different things. And to me, that's probably the biggest reason, even though I told you this is in no particular order, probably the biggest reason why I think Kell Brook will lose this fight is because of the size differential. Golovkin is naturally bigger. He has a bigger back, bigger frame, and he's just overall a good fighter. They're both very skilled, both limited resumes, things of that sort. But I got to go with the bigger person who has skill and also has power and certified middleweight power than the guy who may be pretty strong at middleweight, but we don't know how strong. So for that, I'm picking Gennady Golovkin. I was going to say Kell Brook can maybe even take him the distance, but I think with the weight gain and everything, and for the sake of this video, I'm going to say a TKO stoppage, maybe a corner stoppage, and I would say to the body rounds 6 through 8, somewhere in there. I think just the battle of attrition will probably be one, because Golovkin, he's not dumb. He has a vast amateur background. When he fought David Lemieux, he fought completely different than he fought Marco Antonio Rubio. Rubio had a high knockout percentage, very high, right? And he fought Rubio like he didn't give a shit. But he had a little bit more respect for Lemieux, a guy that Rubio knocked out. And he showed you that, and he worked behind the jab. And I've seen Golovkin fight taller fighters like Ishida. Now, granted, Ishida was a 154 pounder who had moved up, but I believe he's about 6 feet tall. And Golovkin knocked him out brutally in the 3rd round. And now he fights at heavyweight, which is something, a whole different subject. But I seen a good jab in that particular fight. So ultimately, I think Golovkin's going to put it together, get the stoppage, probably to the body. And if he doesn't stop him to the body, I believe the body shot will play a significant role into the breaking of Kell Brook, like maybe produce a knockdown. I just really see a Golovkin body shot having a major impact into the outcome of this fight, whether it's the final punch that stops him or the first punch where we notice he's hurt from to the body. I think the body shot from Golovkin will pay dividends, and it will play a role and show up in this particular fight. I wish both fighters the best of luck. If I'm wrong, I have no problem getting on here and say, Kell Brook, you did it. But I think he just has to fight more of the perfect fight based on he's moving up in weight. Golovkin has a style that's very catchy to the eye. People see that and they're in awe, like, oh shit, you see the sweat flying off, stuff like that. Like I said, the chins, different things like that. So I will be picking Gennady Golovkin by stoppage. I don't really see him knocking him out like Canelo knocked out Khan, knocking him out that cold, because guys like Macklin, they were mortally wounded and paralyzed with pain and riddled with pain, but they weren't knocked out like that, you know what I'm saying, where their eyes were closed or anything like that. So I don't see him getting KO'd, but I would say it's a TKO, and it's through accumulated precise shots and just kind of breaking them down, and it will be set up by the body. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree. I can't wait for the fight. Good night of boxing, good week of fighting. Make sure you guys check out the Spike TV card too. Robert Easter Jr., that is on the undercard of Sergio Mora, Danny Jacobs, and then also Chocolatito. He's fighting Carlos Cuadras. Jesus Soto Caras will be fighting Kamagai in a rematch at the Forum, all on HBO, except for the Spike TV card that I just mentioned. Make sure you like the video, share the video. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego, signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxingego, the future of boxing.